One of the most common questions I get asked is, I have X amount of dollars. Where do I invest? I don't know how to get started. And I always respond this way. You have two options. One, you can educate yourself, or two, you can hire the education and they can do it for you. For those who want to educate themselves, I always say you should start with these books, because these books made such a big impact in my kind of financial and entrepreneurial journey. And these are the 5 I always recommend. So we're gonna go over those 5, and I'm also gonna share with you the big takeaways in the books that made a big impact on me and what I ultimately think will make a big impact on you. The very first book I always recommend, number 1, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And every time I mention it, I definitely get pushback. There's haters of Kiyosaki. Like, Kiyosaki's nuts, that book's full of crap, whatever it is. The reason why I recommend it, first and foremost, is because it's kind of like a gateway drug into finance. Like, there's so many ideas that we had that pertain to money, like to become rich, you have to be born into it, little things like that. When you read that book, you're left with, oh my gosh, what else have I been taught that's wrong? And it makes you, or encourages you, to go out and read and learn more. So that's the book I'd start with. Here's the big 2 takeaways from this book. First thing he mentions is that the rich don't work for money. And it really kind of exposes this idea we have that if we want something, we have to go work for it. And in this kind of viewpoint, we always end up in this cycle where we're working to maintain our lifestyle, which ultimately means we work forever. The idea he breaks down is that we should be working to buy real estate, or you can put assets, but he ultimately says you should work to buy real estate. And then that real estate pays you cash flow. And then that cash flow pays for your lifestyle. And so this idea is what gets you to the point of no longer having to sacrifice your time for money. And then you can ultimately choose what you want to do. But if you don't have that lens, then you get stuck in this, I'm going to work until I die. 2, he breaks down the difference between assets and liabilities. And this part is where this book got really controversial, because he defined assets as things that produce income, appreciation, or both. That's an easy one. He defined liabilities as things that take money out of your pocket. Then he went on to say that a primary residence, or your home, is a liability. And instead of buying that, you should go out and buy investment properties. You can see why this ultimately lit the world on fire in a sense. And the example he gave is, if you buy a home that doesn't appreciate more than the cost of ownership, what in that makes it an asset? It makes a liability. When I read that one, that's the one that flipped my lid. That's the one that kind of broke into this idea of this being a gateway drug, because I had never heard anything like that. I grew up being taught that a home is an asset no matter what. I left going, holy crap, what else wasn't there? So those were the 2 big takeaways that impacted me in this book. Second book is Think and Grow Rich. And the author's Napoleon Hill. Basically what he did was he interviewed 500 self-made millionaires and kind of bundled their philosophy of success into this book. When I first read it, I was like 20 years old. I was in Italy on a skateboarder trip. And I was so embarrassed to be like reading finance books, like with a bunch of skaters, that I would keep the book in between a skate magazine. But in the book, and this is the part that I remember, it says that basically somewhere in this book, the secret to success is going to hit you. And once it does, you will know what to do to become wealthy. And I remember reading that, and I don't know, the thought I had was, holy crap, what if it doesn't hit me? What if I get through this whole book and I don't ever realize what the secret is? Because they didn't kind of go and flat out tell you what it was. Well, I ended up understanding it. I'm going to break it down for you and what it meant now. Whatever you want to do, whether it's become wealthy, become fit, whatever, you have to have a burning desire to do it. So if you want to be a pro skateboarder, your mentality has to be, I'm going to be a pro skateboarder no matter what. I'll stop at nothing until it happens. Second, it has to be followed with the idea that it is possible, or that you can accomplish it. If you don't have both of those working for you, you're pretty much dead in the water. He also talks about the power of your subconscious and how you ultimately have to program your subconscious so that there's no barriers in the way for you achieving your goals. An example of this would be, you can't just set a goal of, I want to be a millionaire or I want to be rich. What you would have to do is set the dollar amount, set what you're going to do or what you're going to sacrifice to achieve it, the amount of time it's going to take or the amount of time you're going to give yourself to get there, the plan of attack that you're going to go through to make it happen, which will ultimately give you a mission statement. So for example, your mission statement could sound like this. I'm going to make $10 million. I'm going to spend the next 10 years doing it. I'm going to work 8 hours a day on my business, et cetera, et cetera. This mission statement, you are going to read out loud twice a day, every single day. And what that ultimately is going to do is program your subconscious to put you on your path to get there. The other thing that really resonated with me in this book is his view of failure. And we already know that failure or the fear of failure is a big problem for a lot of us. His idea is this: when you fail, that's just a flag that means you have to change something in your plan. And in that area, you're going to tweak it, which is ultimately going to put you on a better path to achieve your goals. For me, hearing that in my 20s and then, over the last 20 years, my view of failure now is that failure is just part of the process in where I'm trying to go. Totally normal. It's not fatal. It's just part of what you have to go through. So when I do fail, I just take that moment as a learning lesson, that there's going to be a tweak, and that is ultimately my sign that I'm actually getting closer to where I want to go. It's not a setback that's taking me further away. That's been very powerful for me. Third book is The Richest Man in Babylon. And this book is all about your relationship with money. It's actually, I think, the first time I ever heard about the concept, pay yourself first. If you haven't heard about this, basically what it means is that when you get your check, the first money coming out of that check is going towards your savings and investing. So for example, let's say 20%. I get my check, I take 20% out immediately, put that into savings or investing, and that's done before I pay my bills. So putting my future as a priority above bills. That concept absolutely works. I think that's the first place I heard it. Also, it talks about lifestyle inflation. And what happens for most of us is as we make more money, we spend more money. And where you can really do damage when it comes to our freedom goal is to control your lifestyle. As you make more money, keep your lifestyle where it is. And ultimately what that does is, let's say our lifestyle's here and we're able to save this much. If we focus on making more and keep our lifestyle here, we get more and more margin or spread to put towards our investments. And then we can ultimately get to that goal of financial freedom much quicker. The other two kind of takeaways, this one's more common, but one, doesn't matter how much you make, it all is how much you can save. The second one that's really important, not enough people talk about it, is understanding your risk tolerance and investing according to that risk tolerance. If you don't have a high risk tolerance, do not swing for the fences when it comes to investments. The fourth book, and this one is such a phenomenal book, The Intelligent Investor. What I'll start by saying, it's not the most exciting read, but there is so much value in this book. And one of the big takeaways, which was really encouraging for me, is that you don't have to be a super sophisticated investor or you don't have to have a crazy IQ to invest. Really, all you need is a framework or a plan and your ability to control your emotions. Now, as a skater, that was what was encouraging for me, because we have to learn how to get really good at controlling our fear, right? Like, it's scary to jump off stairs, it's scary to jump on handrails, and that fear doesn't go away. We get really good at putting our mind or our mindset in a position to allow our body to do it. Now, to understand that I could take that same discipline and use that when it came to investing, that was massive for me, because I always had the idea that to invest in the stock market, you had to be really smart. You don't at all, and this book proves it. He also walks through the system of how we should be valuing stocks, that it's not as simple as just buying good or bad assets, because good assets could be overpriced and poor assets can be underpriced. He also talks about how you cannot make an investment, or you should not make an investment, without doing research on the company. and also how we should not just buy investments because they seem secure. Because when we do that and there is a price correction or the price comes down, that puts us in a scenario where we feel like we need to sell because it's no longer secure. That's not how it works. So if you want to understand how to value stocks correctly, this is the book for you. The final book is 10X. And I'm putting this book in here for two reasons. One, the book and the concept of the book are really important. Two, I did a video for TikTok about the 5 books that you should read to make you a millionaire. I posted on Instagram and I got a comment from Grant, who wrote this book. Grant's like, yo dog, where's 10X? So Grant, I'm including this not just as a homie hit, because this book is very important. The concept of the book. We typically set our goals based on what we think is possible. But what actually is possible is actually much, much greater. So the idea is whatever your goal is, you need to multiply that goal by 10. For example, if your goal originally was, I want to make an extra $1,000 a month, what you need to do is say, my goal is to make $10,000 a month. And this is kind of where the magic happens, is our brains are wired to solve problems, to figure things out. And so just by setting the goal, we're gonna figure out how to get to that goal. Now, let's say you don't accomplish it, right? You set the goal of making $10,000 a month and you come up short. Let's say you make $6,000 a month. Well, by setting the higher goal, you just made 6 times more than what your original goal would have been. The coolest thing about this goal is that you're constantly putting yourself in this scenario where you're under delivering on your goals. This happens at any level. And this is something that actually is happening to me with our capital raises. If you would have asked me 3 years ago how gnarly it would be to raise $5 million in a month, I would have been like, that's out of control. I can't get that done. Then you get it done and you're like, holy crap, it's possible. What else is possible? Then you set the goal at 10. Then you get to 10 and you're like, oh my gosh, where is the limit? So I'm constantly having to remind myself that even if it sounds crazy, most likely I'm actually gonna get there, and to put myself in this uncomfortable position so that we're creating kind of the highest outcome possible. So my question to all of you, have you read any of these books? If you have, put down the biggest takeaway for you so that new people watching the video that haven't read this can see or be encouraged by how it impacted our life. Also, if there's any books that you've read that we should add to that list, put them in the comments. Thank you guys. We'll see you guys on the next video.